Hello, beautiful people. Today is June 5th. It is full moon in Sagittarius. It will be happening at 3:12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which I think is pretty interesting. 1212 is a number that keeps coming to me, and that will be, Pacific Standard Time. This is also a lunar eclipse. This kind of kicks off our little mini eclipse season that's happening. Eclipses, are there to, eclipses are shadows, and they're there for us to look at the shadows that are happening in our life. This full moon is happening in Sagittarius, which, is this planet that wants to be opinionated, that wants to speak loudly, that wants to speak clearly. Sometimes those Sagittarius, that energy doesn't really give a fuck and doesn't care about consequences. So we have that, opposite, which the sun season right now is in Gemini. And get interruption number one. So we are opposite this Sun in Gemini, and Sun in Gemini. Gemini is all about communication and asking 1,000 questions and wanting to know the truth, and sometimes, not hanging out long enough to really hear all the answers, but somehow they do. So when we have this, full moon eclipse in Sagittarius, opposite this Gemini season that's had the Sun in Gemini. What you get is Gemini really asking these questions, these hard questions of like, what's the truth? Gemini doesn't really want to hurt someone's feelings by asking the truth, but nevertheless, there they are asking all these questions. And that's what's happening right now. We're asking, questions where we're trying to find the truth and trying to find the answers. And Sagittarius is right there going, yeah, let's freaking do this. Like, what is happening? Let's light a fire kind of thing. And, in the season of everything that's happening globally, we've come off this pandemic that still seeming to transpire and go forth however that is. And now, we have protests that are happening in the United States and really around the globe. And, a lot of police brutality that's happening, and none of this is new. But we have this beautiful awakening, in a sense. And I say that because I don't want to mince words, let's say that. We do have this opportunity to be able to speak and to be heard. It's one thing to protest and it's one thing to speak, but is it being received? And it's not anybody's responsibility on how someone receives information that you're giving. But if we're going to flip the script, if we're going to dissolve systems in their entirety, we want to have a place to rebuild together. And in that, it's everybody has this right to use their righteous anger to move it forward when it's channeled. To me, righteous anger is ultimate love, because ultimate love says this far and no fucking further. We're not doing this anymore. And that's, where we're at right now, where the whole globe wants to unite, we want to bring about a form of peace. This is centuries old of enslavement, centuries old of domination, of competition, of all this stuff, right? Rather than, what the hell is this for? Like, what are we creating? What is the, I don't know if I want to use the word goal, but that's what I'm going to say. What is the goal? Like, how are we benefiting the whole and not just one, right? But that begins with one, where we're looking and we're examining, and that's this eclipse, is we're looking and examining the shadow side. We were feeling this 5 days ago. This shadow work, things kind of shifting and moving, and this, this squeeze, this I have to do something, and yet there is this fear, right? And fear can be so deafening. And fear for too long causes disease, within our own bodies, within communities, within families, within systems, within anything that it is a part of. Now, please hear me when I say this. This is just my personal opinion. Fear is not a bad thing. You know, when you get that intuition, and I like to call it intuition more than anything, like, don't go down there. Don't be with this person. Don't do this. You know, it says it quietly. It says it firmly. But they have the fear of things when it tends to bump up against and rub up against something that makes you uncomfortable. And when something makes you uncomfortable, I remember the monk Pema Chodron, she says, press into the sharp parts. See what's there. You know, what if it's a wound that needs to be like popped, and then, you know, it's a disgusting analogy, but, you know, something needs to come out. And sometimes it comes out in the form of this anger and this emotion, these tears, this, all of this. And this is potent right now. This is our power, where we're looking at where things need to dissolve, where, you know, where is their pain? Where is their isolation? Where is their disharmony? Where is their, you know, the pain within ourselves, within our community, our families? Like, when we look at that and we take a real fucking hard look at that, this shit is real. And, you know, the thing is, when you're looking at something, you shut up. You let it talk. You let it be heard. So that's the beautiful part about eclipses is, shh, be quiet, listen. What is the heart saying? What are people saying to you? What is the information that's coming in? What do you hear? Like, these are the things that are so powerful during this time, right? And then in all of this, we're in opposition to a Venus retrograde. So this will go on till about June 24th, okay? Venus is this beautiful planet of harmony, of love, of beauty. And right now, with her being retrograde, it's asking us, and I've mentioned this, I mentioned this in the new moon video, it's asking us to really look at that shadow side of us. It's really asking us, what do you value? What is keeping you isolated? What is keeping you from moving forward in love? What is that? So if you can take a deeper look at that within yourself, what are the answers that come out? And this, again, is listening. Retrogrades are all about listening. Eclipses are all about listening. And then when you start to, you know, you set your intentions with these lunar cycles, when you're quiet and you listen to spirit, and you listen to ancestors, and you listen to your guides, you listen to these planets, you listen to the plant allies, you know, your perspective begins to shift. And I think that us individually and also as a collective, really taking the time to listen to one another, not talking over one another or competing, but listening to what has to be said. Because in my personal opinion, and that's all this video really is, I really feel that the ancients, this wisdom, our ancestors, whoever you are speaking very clearly. And not only clearly, they want to be heard. They've been quietly supporting you, quietly and strongly present. And this goes across, you know, all ancestors, all ancient wisdom. You know, this is from, you know, the earth. This is where this comes from. And as a collective, if we're quiet enough to listen, we can gain a lot of wisdom and a lot of love, because that's what will transpire, I feel, from all of this. There's got to be a destruction of systems. It can be fearful at times because you're not quite sure how to navigate through the territories. But ultimately, I think if you're quiet, if you take the time to meditate, if you take the time to listen to heart, you take the time to listen to the important conversations of when someone else feels like they're not heard and that they're isolated, what is it that's not being spoken? And we all know there's unhealthy counterparts that seek to speak to be heard, but not so much because you're listening, but because they want to dominate. And there's a difference. And that's, when intuition comes into play. But if your ancestors were to sit in front of you today, as you live and breathe, and don't they already? Yes, they do. What are they saying? What are you hearing? We want to find this peace that passes all understanding, that peace, that undercurrent of peace. And sometimes peace comes with a dissolving of things from the past, a dissolving of things from within. To be able to build something, when you're reconstructing a house, when you're reconstructing something, sometimes you got to knock it down. My ex-husband bought a house not far from me, and man has always been terrible at decisions. And he bought this house thinking he could remodel it quickly, right? And bought it for a pretty penny. And they got in there, even after inspection, and found out it was rotten down to the core. Literally rotten. It had termites. Literally, the structure from underneath had never been put in place. It was a facade. And he consulted many contractors to please tell him that he could go ahead with the remodel. Could he just patch it up? And every single one of them, I think it was a total of like 10, including some of his family that are contractors, all told him, well, you could, but you're going to have to do something about it later. Our advice to you is to knock the whole thing down. And his response was always, but I just put so much effort into this. I've already started remodeling some stuff. I've already done all of this. Look at all this effort I've already put in. This is what I really want. And every single person said, well, ultimately it's your decision, but it's going to cost you a lot of money, a lot of time, and in the end, it probably is best just to knock it down because it's not any good. So he went up to the property, and I know this because we don't live far apart. I'm close with his fiance, and my children, or my older children with him are all in the throes of reconstruction. This has gone on for about a year now. The dragging of feet, like, please don't tell me I have to destroy something that I really just want to patch up so I can get in and enjoy and experience and build new memories. Well, guess what, Buttercup? That's not what's going to happen. So they went up to the property to mark the trees, the property line on which they wanted to keep, because a lot of stuff has got to come down. And in doing that, they began to discover things about the property that they really, really liked and things that they really didn't like. So it literally has become this complete demolition, a knocking down, a clearing out. And, when it gets knocked down, there'll be the trees that were saved because they're old, they're good, they're strong, they're sturdy. And then there will be a reconstruction and a building up. And I think that's beautiful because I won't be living in it, but my children will come home. My older 3 children will be coming home to that. They'll bring their grandbabies to that house. My grandbabies, their children back to that house. And while they may not have been raised there, that will be the one that they start to build memories in. There'll be a grieving of the house they lost, and then they will build more. And that struck me as very interesting. Interruption 2. Whew, children, both mine Geminis. Moving on. Venus is, it wants to help you build in love. It wants to help you create in love. It's dealing with finances. How are you, and I hate to use this throw around spiritual word of abundance, but when someone's thriving, and finances could be, and most definitely will be, money, but you also have to think too, I love the form of barter and trade. Currently where I live, I don't have to pay as much rent because I help deep clean the house once a month, and I'm a cleaner anyway, so that shit doesn't bother me. I was like, Sure, I got you. I used to organize houses in high school and made some pretty dope money doing it. Maybe I should do that now. Spiritual cleansings. Let me clean your shit. Yeah, so we're trying to find clarity with this Venus retrograde, with this full moon in Sagittarius eclipse. And this is kicking off the eclipse season. So the next one will be with the solstice, June 20th to 21st. And for me, summer solstice is, whew, now that's some solar energy. And it will be a solar eclipse, and that will be in Cancer. Beautiful space, very powerful. All of these eclipses, these moon cycles, every single time they're potent, they're powerful for a reason. And the power behind it is your intention, is your consciousness. Everything's being brought to light to be fully aware of consciousness. It's like when you're a child, you live in this little bubble, right? Doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. And then as you grow older, things actually become a little bit more frightening, because as your consciousness expands, you realize, oh, holy shit, there's a lot that's in this world, right? And that's what's happening now. For those who may not have been aware of how heavy and fucking real and present racism is, how very oppressed most of the people in our world and communities are starting to see it. And what happens is, when you become fearful, there becomes this judgment where you, not me, not this, not that, but in defense, but this. And everybody does it. It's nothing new, but the wisdom and the growth and the love comes from, shut the hell up. Take it in. Acknowledge that maybe you didn't know everything. Maybe they acknowledge that, you know what, I didn't know. I'm sorry. I know better now. I'm gonna do better. I'm gonna listen. I'm gonna take action. And when we build, I'm gonna keep this perspective, because as I create through this perspective, totally different, right? So then the next eclipse will be July 4th through the 5th, and that will be another lunar penumbral eclipse happening, and that will be in the sign of Capricorn. And all these eclipses you may not be able to tell, you won't be able to see, like where I'm at on the East Coast of the United States, you can't really see it. And sometimes people, you look at it and it just looks like the regular full moon. But it isn't. These eclipses are something to be said. There's a lot of information trying to come through from ancestors, from our plant allies, from communities present and abroad. Mother Earth speaks as well. Like, it's a lot. So this is why I encourage you to meditate, to take the time to pause, to find the breath. Some herbs that are really supportive. Now, I'm not an herbalist, not a nutritionist. So, if you got some health issues going on, take this with a grain of salt, do your own research. Herbs I'm recommending right now for clients and that I'm personally using, burdock is at the top of the list, very associated with Venus, and that helps with the liver, helps detoxify blood. If you're taking anticoagulant, definitely don't be taking this. But you can pair it up with nettle, and that has, nettle has a lot of iron. Nettle is this beautiful herb that you can drink daily, and when you mix those two together, you got this beautiful hair stimulator, stimulation for growing hair, helping with dandruff. The other one, so you got burdock, nettle, I always say, but burdock for right now. Also rose. So right now I've been drinking burdock and rose tea. So I use burdock root, dried burdock root, and dried rose petals. And I steep that in hot water for about 20 minutes, and then I sip on that throughout the day. And you have to be careful because burdock is a diuretic. So, if you're dehydrated, which I've been saying this in my workout videos, my monthly membership, in my programs, make sure, especially during these warmer months, but just every day in general, your electrolytes are on point. So taking zinc, taking, your magnesium, your potassium, and your sodium, those are all the three for electrolytes. You really want to make sure you're on top of that. I make a great drink with just lemon. I'll put like 7 to 8 cups of water to 4 lemons, about somewhere between a quarter to a teaspoon of sea salt, and then I use stevia glycerite to sweeten it. And that salt, all that just helps to replenish. Another one, I wrote down my herbs here. Motherwort, I believe I talked about this in our new moon video. And horsetail, which is also ruler, Saturn is the ruler. And so if you remember, we have Saturn, Jupiter, Pluto, and Venus all in retrograde. And all of these, we're squaring Mars. This lunar eclipse is squaring Mars and Neptune. And with this is where our conflict, our restlessness, all of this stuff is coming in. So it's like this perfect, and I'm not going to say storm because I don't want to focus on the negative aspects. I want to build. However, that does not mean that there doesn't need to be a dissolving of the systems. That shit ain't right, So it's just an all over. It's not working for everybody. It never was. So let's acknowledge it for what it is. Let's fix this shit, Let's fix us. And it's not that we are broken. It's just like, this container thing ain't working. Let's fix it. So yeah, those are the herbs that I would recommend. Horsetail, burdock, rose, and motherwort. Again, check your herbs against maybe some of the medications that you'll be taking. And then interruption number 3, asking for macrofish. Then the questions that I wrote down that I think would be really great, and setting intention, for yourself, and then moving forward with the collective, this beautiful, and burdock too. Let me remind you, when you're working with magic, when you're setting intention, burdock is also a great protector. Look up your protecting stuff, reach out, sign up with me to work with me privately at onwardwitchandbeyond.com, and we set up these things. My oldest daughter and I, she's 15, we'll be doing ritual and ceremony tonight. She's really starting to get initiated into this consciousness. They have to be ready and wanting it, and she's there. So questions that you can ask yourself are, what are changing? What is changing in you? Recognize that. See what that is, because it may be something that you've never recognized before. What do you value? We talked about this at the new moon, but it may have been shifting and changing, and you may see something different. Like, what are your values at right now? What are you creating? And then I heard from Spirit, how are you creating? What are you creating, and how are you creating? What keeps you, let's ask this really important question, what keeps you separated and isolated? Trust and believe. I have been asking myself these questions all week. Tears upon tears upon tears upon tears, just grief, fear. So look at that, like what's isolating you and what's separating you from the values that you're wanting to live in your life. What is that? I'm going to wrap this up. Let me tell you something. Single, solo parenting life, shit's real. Let's just say that. Last question I had on there was, how do you want to heal? These are not easy questions, and I recommend this to myself, my family, my friends, my children, because it was recommended to me a long time ago. I have like 5 of these composition books lying around with just notes on notes on notes on notes. Sometimes it's just random ideas that come to. Sometimes it's a dream. I try and keep it within the same time frame, just so that when I look back, or I'm looking for a reference point, or I'm looking like a map to see where I've come and where I've gone, and all of that, that it begins to make sense, because it's in the same time frame. That said, I have a journal that I've kept for a whole Venus cycle, which is 8 years, and that's interesting to look at, So those are the things that are happening right now. I make these videos, our moon talks, just because I get so many questions like, what the hell's happening? And let me tell you, I look to my astrologer friends, and I look to what other people are saying. It's important to listen, but you know, at the end when I come in and I make these moon talks, or I meet with clients, and you know, you're asking questions, the pertinent questions, and you're listening to the answers for real. Spirit's right there coming through, and again, you're listening again, and it's a beautiful space of learning, you know. So I'm drinking my burdock rose tea. You can see, so don't spill it. And two, something interesting. I'll end with this. You know, menstrual cycles, moon cycles, are very important for women, and a lot of times women will bleed more towards new moons, which they've seen kind of like this beautiful time period for bleeding is new moon, and ovulation is around the full moon. I've never been one of those people. I sometimes can coordinate mine to match a moon cycle, especially if I'm feeling some type of way. But, you know, if I keep track of my moon cycles, it's usually about 29 days in between each menstruation. And what was interesting with all of this stuff that's going on, and this is a very powerful year for myself, and a lot of healing, a lot of stripping down, a lot of visions that I had many years ago are now coming to fruition, seeing that play out. And it's a very raw experience. And my moon cycle was right on point, and then all of a sudden it stopped. And I heard from Spirit, it'll come. It's going to come with the full moon and the eclipse. And my moons have always affected my moon in that when the eclipses come, you know, the deep part, the shadow side, you know, when you're on your menstrual cycle, both sides of your brain tend to work together in conjunction, and the veil of understanding and taking in and seeing information for what it is a lot thinner. So it makes it easier, you know. Women always poo-poo this menstrual cycle. I'm like, woman, embrace that shit. Let it go. Let it flow, like for real, and see what's there. Put your damn feet up for the first 48 hours. And, you know, sometimes you're not able to. I mean, I understand, you know, when you got to work, believe me, trust and believe. But when you can, take the moment to rest and really hear and listen. So mine came 57 days in between cycles. And I knew it was coming this morning. And don't you know, I woke up and sure enough, there it was. And there was just this beautiful connection of clarity, especially in my study of Venus right now. So yeah, I encourage you, where you're at, take the time to drop down deep, dive deep, like the mermaid. Go down to the bottom, man. Find the treasure, find the jewel. See what's there, because this shit ain't for the people that are gonna be like, yeah, I know, I'm doing the work. It's so great. It's such a peaceful and wonderful journey. Peace, love. You know, there's lots of peace and there's lots of love. And there's also a lot of shit that needs to be turned into some compost to grow the seeds. Hear me on that? Whew. Okay, so happy full moon. Happy eclipse. Happy diving down and doing the damn work, you know, doing the damn thing, because this is where the change is gonna happen. Healing, change, good. Don't fear it. Step into it, embrace it. Okay, much love to you. Make sure that you're subscribed, you like, you comment, you share with your people. I have a monthly membership. You can visit my website, onwardwitchandbeyond.com. Moon talks are free. If you feel like donating, my PayPal link is in the description box. But you can work with me privately. You can do the online monthly. And all this is tying in together movement, meditation, nutrition, and herbal astrology. And potent. All right, beautiful people. So much love. Give me a like. Love to hear the comments. Be nice. All right. Peace.